Attorney General filed felony charges yesterday against 3 people in connection with the 2020 scheme to submit a slate of false electors in support of former President Donald Trump. What's your reaction here? Are the charges justified, even though the case is still under investigation?
As I tweeted, it's outrageous. The charges are not justified. Basically, they're weaponizing Wisconsin's judiciary and judicial system now, and I just think it's outrageous. It's now, under Democrat tyranny, now it's illegal for a conservative lawyer to offer legal advice to a client. I mean, this is absurd. I mean, the whole case about the alternate elections is absurd. It was an alternate slate, as I understand it, I wasn't involved, an alternate slate to make sure that the court case that was not decided yet didn't become moot by not having an alternate slate of electors. I mean, it was a reasonable legal thing to do. There's nothing felonious about it. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's completely appropriate. What's inappropriate is for Attorney General Gall to now try and politicize this and criminalize it.
Speaking of former President Trump, who was found guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records last week, you stated that it was a travesty of justice. Our judicial system will never be the same. Your reaction to that, and then also, how do you feel about the justice system a week later as we see Hunter Biden sitting in federal court?
Well, first of all, in terms of the travesty of the Trump trial, I mean, even liberal attorneys and pundits could not understand, we're talking about what a ridiculous set of charges those were. But unfortunately, they were brought by, in a state whose attorney general ran not on meting out impartial justice, but to get Trump. The DA, the exact same thing. His campaign pledge was to get Trump. That's not the way our judicial system ought to work, okay? And unfortunately, the trial was held in a venue where, 95% of the jurors were probably Trump haters, so it wasn't even close to fair. In terms of Hunter Biden, I mean, this is a prosecution. They're going after the absolute lowest level crime that he may have committed. They've allowed the statute of limitations to expire on the more serious tax charges. The case is being brought, by a prosecution that, basically brought to prosecuting this case kicking and screaming. I mean, they set up this sweetheart deal that was so unprecedented that a couple of questions by the judge blew up the deal. Now, I don't doubt the prosecutors are always going to try and win the case, but it's being brought now in a venue in Wilmington, Delaware. I mean, last time I checked, that was Biden country. So what I've been saying is it will not surprise me at all if there will be a couple jurors that'll say, well, I don't think they proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and probably worst case, it's a hung jury.
So the House Judiciary Committee yesterday grilled Attorney General Merrick Garland for several hours. He said that he will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated as well. Do you think that Republicans are attempting to intimidate and hold the Attorney General in contempt?
No, Congress is trying to do its constitutional responsibility of doing oversight. And what has happened, unfortunately, is for decades now, congressional oversight has atrophied. And administrations have figured that out. And so they refuse to cooperate. They refuse to turn over to Congress, which means they refuse to turn over to the American people information that the American people deserve to know. In this case, the audio transcript of Special Counsel Hur's interview with President Biden. I mean, you take a look at what President Biden did in terms of holding illegally top secret information, classified information as a senator and then as vice president. I mean, it's not even close to what President Trump did as a president who has classification authority. Here you've got somebody who doesn't have classification authority, and the prosecutor is deciding not to bring charges in the Biden case because he's too infirm. He's not mentally competent to stand trial. I think the American people ought to hear that audio transcript so we can decide for ourselves, well, this man, if he's not competent to stand trial, he's certainly not competent to become President of the United States for a second term.
I have 2 more questions with you and about his cognitive awareness. Wall Street Journal actually came out with an article last night. They interviewed 45 people over the course of several months. Many expressed concern about his state. Of course, the White House is coming to his defense. You seem to express some concern here about his mental fitness. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, you don't have to meet with him in person. You see in that video, he is obviously mentally declining. and physically decline. He's an 81-year-old man. I mean, I get that. It's sad to see that in any human being. But this is the President of the United States, and he refuses to acknowledge it. The staff around him refuse to acknowledge it. When the American people, it's in plain sight. Again, it's very sad, but again, I knew that then Vice President Biden was unfit for office prior to being elected. Every day that goes by and he declines further mentally, he becomes even more and more unfit for office.
Lastly, last week you claimed the failed U.S.-Mexico border bill was a political ploy for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and the negotiations were not in good faith. Yesterday, as you know, President Biden signed an executive order, which is the most aggressive action that the White House has taken so far. What do you make of Democrats' action here?
First, the most aggressive action that President Biden took was when he entered office, 92, 93 executive actions to unravel and dismantle all the successful executive actions President Trump took to secure the border. So President Biden has always had the authority to secure the border. He used it to open it up. He has the authority to secure it. The reason those negotiations were such a sham, or the proof of that, is what Chuck Schumer said when they failed. He said, we were playing chess, they were playing checkers, and we got our Ukraine bill. That's all they were looking for. And then to prove the point even further, he went on to say, and we're in far better shape on the border than we were 3 months ago. Now, you didn't get a bill passed. Obviously, we weren't securing the border further. Why would the Democrat leader say they were in better shape on the border? He said that because all he was looking for was political cover. And unfortunately, Linda McConnell, in secret negotiations and an awful bill, gave them some measure of political cover. But I hope the American people understand that it's the Democrats, it's President Biden that want an open border. They opened up the border. They caused this problem. They could fix it if they'd want to. They just don't want to.
Do you think that they're taking this action because we're only about 5 months away from the next election?
Well, yes. And let's face it, the mainstream media by and large has not been covering the border the way they would certainly if it was a Republican president. The only reason that this is getting notoriety is because you had Democrat mayors, Mayor Adams and Mayor Johnson, New York and Chicago, saying that the sanctuary cities aren't working out too well, that the small percentage of the illegal immigrants that they're getting in their cities are going to destroy their cities. So now all of a sudden the mainstream media has to pay attention, so it's getting some publicity. And most Americans, the vast majority, want a secure border. They don't want an open border. They want a sovereign nation. And so now, President Biden is being called out. And so he's taking this very weak, very ineffective action, but it just proves my point, our point. He's always had the authority all along to secure the border. Why is he setting the threshold at 2,500 people? He's got the authority to stop processing asylum claims and start sending people back right away at 2,500. Who's got the authority at 0? He could actually secure the border. Again, he just doesn't want to. Even these weak actions basically codify a couple million people a year. That's outrageous.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.